Simeon Oriko.
No, I'm good, thanks. Yep. I don't know. Let me try and open it with PowerPoint and see if it will work. Open it with PowerPoint. I think it's a keynote problem. Problem is keynote specifically.
Bueno, estamos con las keynote. Tenemos la suerte este año de contar con una delegación de África. En África hay un programa también de ICFJ de innovación en medios y está Justin Arenstein acá. Y el año pasado vino él solo a la media party a ver de qué se trataba y vio que éramos gente más o menos normal y se trajo a sus amigos este año. Así que, y Simeon trabaja en varios programas de innovación también y ya está listo.
All right, thank you. Is it still morning? Good morning, everyone. So my name is Simeon Oriko. I work with the Open Institute as the community lead. And today I want to talk about basically our work with building open data ecosystems in Kenya and in Africa in general. So sometime in 2000, sorry about that. So some time ago, about 2 years or 3 years ago, the Kenya government launched the Kenya Open Data Portal. This was the first government-backed initiative in Africa that aimed to release government and public data online, free to the public. And we're very excited, and one thing that you must know about Kenyans is that we pride ourselves being the first, the biggest, or the best. So if you thought everything was big in Texas, wait till you get to Nairobi. Funny enough, 2 years later, the permanent secretary, who's like the number 3 person in the ministry, for information and communications, basically said that the Kenya Open Data Initiative has hit a dead end. 2 years. That's very shocking and very embarrassing for a country that prides itself with being the first and the biggest and the best. To quote him, he says, we're not getting data from organizations because they claim to own it, even those that may have collected the data using taxpayers' money. We are working on a cabinet memo that would legally oblige these ministries and government agencies to provide data. And this is the problem with the Kenya Open Data Initiative. It's very supply-driven. The government heavily depended on other ministries and other government agencies to provide data. And at some point, they just decided that, you know what, we're not giving you data. We don't want to give you data, and for different reasons. It could be accountability, it could be transparency, it could be a whole lot of other reasons. So, under the leadership of Justin, who's a Knight Fellow, we basically sat down and thought and said, what is the best way to build open data ecosystems? And we thought, why don't we look at the civic perspective? Why don't we come up with ideas that are grassroots-driven, demand-focused, that build an active citizenry and strengthen civic watchdogs and creates new avenues for civic engagement to help shape better public governance and public services. And we basically thought of, the idea of citizen focus basically was based on the idea of empowering mass mobilization agents, including the citizen movements, youth groups, media, to give them access to data, tools, and skills that would help them participate and build a real civic engagement. We also thought that this idea needs to be demand-driven, that open data needs to be more than just rhetoric. It needs to answer the real-world challenges facing citizens, and it needs to be underpinned by a data economy, something that when the Kenya Open Data Initiative was announced, did not exist. We also need things that are outcomes-based. Basically, we're looking for outputs, tools and civic engagement tools that are very meaningful impact and are scalable and can easily be replicated. And one such is an idea called Go to Vote, which is a tool that was built in less than 24 hours and has been, that allowed citizens to gain access to election data, including polling stations. And I believe Justin will mention that in his talk a little slightly later on. So the idea was to create a self-sustaining ecosystem with catalytic mechanisms that support the germination and growth of open data champions. So our pipeline strategy is basically a modular approach to provide incremental access to resources, skills, support systems, and various acceleration mechanisms. And right there you can see a basic breakdown of the model that we run. Now this does include partnerships, and we're basically building a demand-driven ecosystem of data creators and curators and data analysts and narrators who are partnering with grassroots citizen movements, and you can see some of the people listed here. During the Code for Kenya program, we partnered with newsrooms and research companies who were able to both build tools as well as engage both journalists and common citizens in the whole open data ecosystem. We also host data literacy skills and masterclasses. So we try and develop course materials that we teach journalists and other developers to sort of boost their skills and expertise around data utility, data use, and data uptake. We've run data bootcamps in quite a number of countries. These are just a few images to showcase what we've done in Ghana, Tanzania, Malawi, and South Africa. Hacks, Hackers, and the Code for Democracy initiatives are also ways to build a community around the open data ecosystem. This community basically involves civic hackers, data activists, data narrators, who we work together with incubators, who sort of all come together to bring their skills, their knowledge, their expertise around the idea of building a data economy. And they drive this economy by building applications, by liberating data, and similar activities. So the railway back in the 60s, 70s was probably one of the biggest infrastructure advancements in Kenya and in East Africa in general. And because it built the backbone for the economy. And we figured one of the ways to build a backbone is to create code repositories and data repositories, sort of have an Africa Commons resource hub. And all these resources, the picture that you see in the background is actually Open Africa, Africa's now largest data portal. And this is community driven in that anybody from anywhere within the continent can liberate data and upload it and host it up there. And it's accessible freely to the public. I did mention about liberating data, and this is by digitizing documents and knowledge within media, academia, civil society. We're trying to turn deadwood archives into new digital structured data. And one of the best examples of this is during the Code for Kenya Fellowship, we did try to digitize old archives from the media companies that we partnered with for that process. You've heard me mention the Code for Kenya quite a lot. So the Code for Kenya is a fellowship model whereby we embed technologists into newsrooms and civil society organizations who sort of try and work with these organizations to either liberate their data or to turn them into data, to open up their data pockets to the public. And also this sort of boosts the data economy. We also have citizen tech labs, core teams of coders in J accelerators with additional mentorships and workspaces for data startups and citizen-driven projects in tech incubators across Africa. So we've got basically teams of people who are willing to support any projects and any citizen-driven projects or any data projects. And these also contribute to building a more firm, a more stable data economy. Occasionally we have the Africa News Innovation Challenge and Africa Story Challenge, which the idea is to try and provide seed funding to ideas that would, to a venture funding pipeline offering angel and early staging impact investments to initiatives that have achieved meaningful traction and that offer scalability, sustainability, and replicability. So this sort of tries to boost efforts from the ground up, most of them from the communities that we have, to try and grow their initiatives to a good scale. So basically, what's next? We're trying to expand the footprint, especially with the Code 4 program. The very first one ran last year in Kenya, and we are trying to boost this now in Code for Ghana, Code for Nigeria, and Code for South Africa. And later on, there is one of my colleagues from South Africa, Adi, who's here with us today, will be hosting a workshop and will be more than happy to talk more about this, and I'm sure Justin will also highlight a few of this in his talk. The idea also of knowledge sharing is to sort of share the knowledge that we've amassed through the workshops, through the communities we've built, through the data bootcamps to the rest of the world. We've primarily held and built capacity in Nepal, Moldova, Bolivia, and Jordan through the data bootcamps initiatives. There was recently one here in Bolivia. A lot of that was modeled on some of the data bootcamps that we've hosted in Africa over the last 2 years. Instead of constantly reinventing the wheel, we're focusing on pooling resources to build common solutions. OpenAfrica.net, which is the largest Africa open data repository, has already inspired a clone in Latin America, that's Open Data Latin America, and we're collaborating with Code for Europe to build an Open Civic as a common resource and toolset. So if you want to collaborate with us, those are our contacts, and that's how you can really reach us. Thank you.
Bueno, ahora es tiempo de nuestro diseñador Andrés Snikovsky y